first of all, thank you so very much for taking time out to be at this. It's not just a talk fest, and it's not just a theme song that we say Digital Bharat. I mean, there is now, they say, talk about religion, talk about caste, but essentially the divide in the country has to be digital or non-digital. So I think in some sense we are evolving as a country. So therefore it's crucial that we have a conclave focused on this. As Roshan was mentioning, both were there yesterday at this Best Banks event in Mumbai, where Mr. Amit Shah was there. And he touched upon this, though he told the bankers really that, while we have been good at growth, you've been chasing growth, it's better to shift focus from chasing growth to actually aiming for scale. He said Indian banks need to figure among the top 10 globally. So we are so happy that actually we begin the first session today with scaling the digital public infrastructure. And when we talk of digital public infrastructure, there are enough and more in terms of examples of what India has done in terms of digital public infrastructure. There are a number of examples, platforms which are there, whether it's ONDC, GSTN, they're different. And so if we can begin with, since we begin with Mr. Srivastava's GSTN, I think, and that's been also in the news, may I begin with the first point about, when we talk of a digital platform like this, the first thing with the revised GSTN was about upgrade, which happened very quickly, and everyone said that it's been done. When we talk in terms of scaling, what is it that you did differently, and what perhaps other platforms can do so that the upgrade and the readiness for change becomes like a par for the course and built into the system? If we can maybe begin from there.
Sure. So GSTN platform is existing since 2017. So it was built then. And the way it was built was already, it's sort of distributed architecture, modular architecture. And when you design the platform of such scale, you would also need to consider that what are the, from functional perspective, what are the things which can change? And what are the things which will remain static? So that's how you basically bring in the principle of configurability there. So configuration part is something which, since there are, here the velocity of law is also very high. So we need to basically think very seriously about configuration part. So from this change perspective, it was actually just a matter of changing a configuration parameter, adding more rates. And since the change is at a very huge scale, so then you do a testing, very solid testing, end-to-end testing, and that's where basically more of the time spent. But from the development perspective, it was just follow the architectural principles, good architectural principles, and I think the job gets done there.
Okay. Yeah, I think from an ONDC perspective, Mr. Agrawal, if you, as I constantly say, young leader standing for a young organization, if you can, you have two, ONDC operates at two levels, isn't it? B2B and B2C. So if you can, from what he has mentioned about the platform and its effective use and leveraging it, what do you think can be done? And I'm addressing also this point from the awareness point of view. Yesterday I was in an Uber cab and I was telling him, he was complaining of commissions and all of that. So here is a non-rent seeking entity where we have examples in Bangalore, for example, they talk of, that's this being used. But awareness is still not there. So how do we therefore look in terms of greater adoption and awareness, apart from what he's saying about platform readiness for future? Some thoughts there, perhaps.
Sure. So, thank you so much. As far as so you asked two questions effectively. One is how do we look at adoption and awareness at different levels, and how do you solve it?
Be a little closer to, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, actually, as far as awareness about ONDC goes, it's always been a evolving question and dilemma that we have also debated and thought about deeply. And let me explain what I mean. Do consumers or sellers need to know that they're using ONDC for us to be successful? And let me explain what I mean. everyone uses internet. Everyone here, how many people realize, okay, what systems they're using. So there's one chain of thought which says ONDC has to be transparent, has to be in the background, has to be in the back end. And we observe it very regularly. So just to pick up your example of the cab ride, we were very happy and proud, and we are supporting Honorable Minister Shah announced Sahkar Taxi earlier this year in the parliament, saying that, you know, we are building a cooperative taxi model, and now that is being powered by ONDC. Now, I know as that scales, a lot of people will use Sahkar Taxi, they may or may not use ONDC. At the same time, yes, there is a lot of merit about people realizing that something like a DPS stands for something different. There is a different level of trust. It comes from the government. And how we are thinking about it is, what you need to answer fundamentally is, what does the DPS stand for? Okay, and it has to be very simple. And we have so many great lessons to learn. When I think of UPI, I know I scan a QR code, the payment will happen. That's the assurance of UPI. We know that Aadhaar, my identity is secure, and that we all know it took more than a decade to actually convince everyone for that. So as ONDC, we are working on defining for someone in a rural India who may not understand technology, who may just sparingly use a phone, definitely does not understand any technical terms. What does ONDC stand for? And in fact, any DPI stand for. And once it takes a long time to discover, it also then takes a long time to convince. And I think that's kind of my understanding of how do you drive mass awareness of a DPI like ONDC.
Yeah, no, I think even often, as is the example is given of UPI also, it took 4 or 5 years for actually to be taken to the level at it is. I will of course come back to you on this. The question which many would want to know, and that would be for all the panelists here, would be in terms of the deepening the adoption. And I will come to the questions around the deepening of adoption as well. But the point was mentioning, just a quick thought when we talked of this, like the awareness need not be there, we should be at the back end. Say for example, some numbers, like for example, when you had this thing in Bangalore, in terms of, let's say, take the same example of high, like Uber, another example. So what, in terms of scale, like, having it across all the states, not just confined to few, that also, I mean, how are the numbers adding? Maybe that's something which people would be.
Sure. So just to give a broad sense of where we are, we currently support around 2 crore transactions monthly, which is 0.5 crore a day. Is it where we want to be? No, it probably needs 2 more zeros for anyone in India to be happy about it. For context, we on average we have been growing about 1,000% year on year, and I know that that's just really scratching the surface. In terms of just variety and adoption, here is a number which I basically track on a daily basis. Let's say last month, orders on ONDC came from 1,200 locations and went to sellers or service providers, as we say, to 800 locations. And locations I'm defining usually by city or town. And that's the size and scale of it. Also, in terms of what we enable, everyone knows perhaps ride-hailing, everyone knows food. People maybe know about retail, so we have consumer goods and things like that. But very few people realize, for instance, financial services. So if you're taking a asset-less loan, whether as a business or as an individual, whether you are taking health insurance, whether very soon you are investing in micro SIP mutual funds, you're probably using ONDC in the back end.
Yeah, great, thanks so much. Sunilji, now I'm going in the same fashion. None of what has been happening on the digital public infrastructure or the platforms would have grown to this scale for us all to celebrate had it not been the huge quantum of investment by the private sector, whether it was from Paytms to different things. I mean, I was reading the other day some figure of some $10 billion of amount invested, the fruits of which are being, so their role of innovation and the private intervention therefore becomes crucial. So your thoughts in terms of, when we talk of the adoption and the newer models, newer innovations, which are, some thoughts on that in terms of how you see the road ahead?
Sure. So we are the technology providers to various sectors, primarily financial services, government, and we work with some of these gentlemen. We leverage what GSTN does. We work with Ministry of Finance on some large projects, and we are also running a project with a decision support system at RBI. But coming back to DPI, I think it's a very virtuous system between what the government has done with the identity layer, with the payment layer, with cashless, and now also with consent, with account aggregator, and how we have been able to leverage those digital goods to provide better service to India and to provide inclusion to Bharat. Now, without identity, imagine doing a KYC when you are sanctioning a loan or onboarding for a savings account. Imagine doing an insurance in Bharat in tier 3, tier 4 without UPI, the ability to pay premium. So all those things have democratized access, have brought in larger pools of people within the ambit of services, both which technology providers provide, but also what government provides. So some of the projects we do for government, for example, enable benefit transfer to the larger population in India. And alongside DPI, institutions that have been built like GSTN, which enables a lot of flow-based credit today instead of asset-based, which has enabled a lot of activity in the MSME segment, and which is again a focus for the government of India. So what all those institutions have done, including digitization of land records today. It's very easy to assess crop in tier 4, tier 5, and be able to give the insurance benefit, the bima benefit to the farmer if the crop is damaged. So I think it's like while the DPI attains more scale with what GSTN is doing, and with more layers getting put into the core infrastructure, and innovation from private sector like ourselves, of course, the challenges remain in terms of how do we continue to scale, how do we now use AI in what we are doing, and more importantly, in the recent past, how do we take care of the threats posed by security, threats posed by cyber risks. And of course, with next 2 days, the act coming into fruition, how do we enable, consent? How do we enable protection and privacy of data? So we are in interesting times towards Viksit Bharat in the next 20 years.
Yeah, that's, I think, important. I think the point which you say about lots of important points that I'll come back to on some of them. But now to Mrs. Sirin Kumar, as a regulator, we're discussing this point about scaling digital public infrastructure. While today many look at RBI not just as a regulator, but also in some ways an enabler, and also looking in terms of how it is facilitating this democratization of what has been happening. Your thought in terms of when we bring in these changes, how do we ensure that the systemic stability remains? When we talk of scale, that is another issue which sometimes comes up. So some thoughts on that other than what the speakers have said so far.
So thank you very much for having me here. And on the DPI, the familiar things are well known, the Jam Trinity, the UPI, and all the things which the speakers touched upon. I would like to touch upon, yes, the stability part. And for stability, it is important that the RBI has an understanding of the sector, fintech sector, which is a large sector, growing sector. I mean, comparatively, it may not be very large today, but it is growing, and it is it is very important to have an understanding of the innovation which is bringing, to enable that innovation, also to ourselves. I mean, Reserve Bank, as you mentioned, RBI has also taken the role of operationalizing some of these things. For example, the role of public sector in the DPI is now well known. I will give you 2-3 examples where the Reserve Bank of India is spearheading these kind of innovations. One is the Central Bank Digital Currency Project. So the Central Bank Digital Currency Project pilot project started in 2022 November, and it is scaled, I mean, not to the extent we think in terms of UPI and all, but the way it is happening is that on the background, a lot of technical infrastructure, a lot of fine tuning, etc. is taking place, and the number of features are getting added day by day. More banks, more financial players are getting connected to this. So a stable environment is being created, which in future will lead to as a kind of a DPI kind of role. So one aspect in this regard, I can tell you, from 4 banks when we started to 19 banks in the retail CBDC, 2 non-banks who are there. And there are millions of users who are onboarded on the CBDC and doing transactions. One major element which we are focusing upon is the programmable CBDC. And in the programmable CBDC, it is ensured that the end use of funds to the desired sector group, let us say medicine, grocery, studies, or to empaneled merchants, etc., can take place. So there could be a time limit or expiry of those transactions. One major problem statement for the government, banks, or some other entities are to ensure the end use of funds. That the funds, when given as a welfare benefit or as a loan, is spent at the approved kind of places so that the desired economic effect take place. So in that context, we have seen a huge amount of interest for programmable CBDC. Adoption by the central government schemes, by the state government schemes are being explored. One of the schemes is PM Vidya Lakshmi, where programmable CBDC is being used to ensure that in a front-ended way, the beneficiaries are getting CBDC, which they can redeem and the funds can flow to the loan account. Instead of reimbursing the subvention to the bank, by programmable CBDC, the beneficiaries get those funds in their wallet and they are able to actively redeem it. There are multiple projects which are going on with the central government. There is in Gujarat, we have a G-Safal project where CBDC is being used to, again, make sure that it goes to the spending is done to the desired category of merchants. Also, there could be a negative list. For example, some of the state governments are looking at money should not be spent in to, let us say, lottery or liquor shop, those kind of things. So those eliminations, negative list also can be enabled. And we are also exploring the offline functionality so that in every nook and corner of the country, once the offline is enabled, CBDC can work. So there are lots happening here. So, but another product I would like to also touch upon is the ULI, Unified Lending Interface, wherein a lot of data sources are getting connected, and it's a B2B platform where banks and BFCs can tap in those data. Today, more than 80 sources of data are connected. Banks and NBFCs can tap the data and provide instant loan, collateral-free loans in an instant manner with everything completing in 5 minutes or less. So these are some of the things which the Reserve Bank is doing on the operationalization side with the support of our subsidiaries like Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. Apart from that, for the fintech sector, there are multiple efforts which are ongoing to engage with the fintech sector through monthly engagements like FinQuiry, FinConnect, in which we connect the investors as well as the banks and BFCs with the fintech so that they can tie up with those vendors and they can do the projects and bring innovation. There are regulatory sandboxes, innovations. I can see that I have to stop now, so I will stop.
No, lots. I mean, we're more than happy. As journalists, we like to hang our hat on news developments, and the more you say, the more we actually are eager to hear. So it's always good. But 2 or 3 specific points that I would say, just very pointed. See, for example, we talked about CBDC. Last year, there were the pilots which are done. A quick thought in terms of what has been the feedback, what has been the status as far as the pilots are concerned. And B, when you talk about, and I will take that up also with Mr. Bhowmik, ULI you mentioned. ULI, when will ULI be the UPI in credit?
Yeah. So let me take the first question is on the CBDC, how we have seen the performance. So as I mentioned, it has scaled. The CBDC has scaled in all terms, in terms of users, in terms of the number of banks and non-banks which are distributing it, in terms of the number of use cases, in terms of the functionalities it offers, in terms of the reach. For example, from 4 banks to now 19 banks and 2 non-banks are the distributors of CBDC. We started with 4 banks, now 19 plus 2, 21.
How much now?
Number of users, we have around 7 million users, active users, and merchants who are there on the CBDC, who have CBDC wallets. Then in terms of the functionalities, it is interoperable with the UPI. You can make payment in any of the UPI QR codes across the country. It is the programmability function has been added, which I explained in detail. Then the offline the features of proximity and non-proximity based solutions are being tested. So these technical testings and integrations for a new product which does not have anything to look back to requires a lot of time, effort, and coordination. And it will take its own time to if you compare with other successful products to see. But it's a unique product, given that it's a central bank liability, and it's not just the retail CBDC, it's a wholesale CBDC, cross-border CBDCs. So those are subjects in itself, and it will take more time, so I'll not touch upon them. But I can assure you that a lot is going on this front. As far as the ULI is concerned, again, you can see in a short span of time, when it started in 2023 as a public tech platform for frictionless credit to enable loans in automated way for farmers, Kisan credit cards, because those are collateral-free loans, to now around 12 loan journeys, around 80 plus data sources connected, and so many banks, non-banks connected, and lakhs of crores of worth of loans being disbursed using APIs of this platform. So it is already has gained momentum, and it will take its own time as far as if you compare to the scale of successful products.
Sorry to interrupt. So when do you think we will see, let's say, for example, the credit appraisals for MSMEs being revolutionized using this? I mean, if you have a quick thought before I go to Mr. Bhowmik, I've kept him.
So the platform provides access to the data to the banks and NBFCs to take credit decisions. Now, to build upon that data, the functionalities, so that in a straight-through processing manner, the loans can be granted is the function of the banks and NBFCs who are front-ending, or the fintechs who are front-ending that. So they need to take that use this platform, utilize the data sources. They don't have to do bilateral integrations. Everything is available at one platform. Now you have to create those straight-through processing mechanisms and take leverage and advantage of this.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bhowmik, in the interaction that we've had, you've always been charmed by the 3 letters of the English alphabet, GROWTH, growth. You've always been mentioning that growth is something which you are very keen on. So one of the things which we heard yesterday from Mr. Amit Shah also, and this has been a theme song with many of the people we interact, especially those on the stage here, is about financial inclusion. That when we talk of inclusion, and when we talk of MSMEs or inclusion or taking it beyond, how do we therefore, from your vantage point, ensure that growth, the growth engine is not just maintained, but in fact enhanced, while we still talk of financial inclusion? What is the thought process on that? Some thoughts that you can share, other than any specific comment you would want to make on what you've heard thus far.
Surely. Very good morning. I think I'll just catch up on one comment you made. Like sometimes the question of scale of DPI comes in. From Government of India, there's no sometimes. Our only objective is for DPI is to scale, and scale at the saturation level, population scale, which is what Aadhaar has been done. UPI, we are at 60%. For investment, we are around 15 to 16%. For insurance, we are around below 10%. And for pensions, I think little above 10 to 20%. So we have lot of miles to cover. Now coming back to the questions which you have on the financial inclusion, I think the panelists here, at least I am right now can connect this scaling of DPI with each and every panelist here, because everyone has a role to play. I remember when we were integrating GSTN with the account aggregator, there was, so before that, I just want to give you an idea of when you speak about scaling, there are multiple factors which are dependent on that scaling. And only delving into these operational factors may not help us to scale at the level which we want to do. So every DPI, so DPI first of all was a concept which I was closely involved in, which came up in 2023 as an acronym, which was established for the world in the G20 to give the India story, to take the India story to the whole world, and the success which we have got in UPI and Aadhaar. Now saying that, DPI also you have to see that there is a statutory layer, there is a regulatory layer, there is an operational layer, and the end there is a technological layer. So we normally delve with this technological and the operational layer, but the statutory layer and the regulatory layer is equally important. And because it's a digital public infrastructure, it's actually the statutory layer and the regulatory layer which is so important, because it needs coordination between multiple ministries, multiple departments, multiple agencies. And then we also have to carve out a suitable operational model to take that infrastructure forward, which is a real challenge, which we need to kind of understand, because we have seen how Aadhaar has grown, we have seen how UPI has grown, and that is an established success model for us, right? Now, when we want to scale account aggregator, we also had faced so many issues. There were issues with the data privacy, there were issues with data consistency, there were issues with the certification, there were issues with the incentive layer, there were issues with the commercial model. So all those things there has to be bodies which will act on those kind of issues, come up with different kind of standards, and then take it forward. Because scaling of DPI will depend on all these, solving all these issues in this ecosystem. Now saying that, standardization is a very important issue, so we have to enable some of the organization to standardize it, right? So who will be so we have to form those kind of an organization. And what is the best way to form this organization? Is it government which is forming that organization, or is it some kind of a Section 8 company which needs to be formed, right? Operationalizing it, or it is some kind of an NGO which will take it forward. So these are all questions. I'm putting it up as a questions because these are all very important questions for scaling up. Now, coming back to the financial inclusion part, so this is my kind of a vision, because we actually deal with from the policy level. We have to have a thought process of how to carve out a national financial architecture in financial sector to go for this financial inclusion approach. It's a very commonsensical approach. Every human being needs to, first of all, being identified digitally. That is step number one, flow of people. Second thing is they have to move money. So UPI is there, you move money. Third thing is they have to be commercially employed. And the commercial employment has to be through some kind of a digital infrastructure. ONDC is there, we need to scale that up, right? After that, to deal with that commercially, you need to have credit or leverage for the multiplier effect. That is what you are actually have pointed out. The MSMEs, which is almost like 50% of our employment goes through MSMEs, and in the MSMEs, 99% is micro. Micro is almost similar to sole proprietor, which is almost similar to individuals, and we have to make them the ease of doing business. I think one sir here has mentioned about KYC. I was dealing with KYC, simple due diligence is one of the method in which you just onboard them digitally without much cost, because to give a 10,000 rupees loan, if you are kind of spending more than 200 rupees in a KYC, there is no use case for the formal financial institution to lend them. They have to depend on the informal ones. So extrapolate that 10,000 to 1 lakh also, there is no ROI in that way. So we have to have those kind of ways of doing kind of initiatives. We are trying to digitalize KYC. We are trying to bring in account aggregator. We are trying to bring in ULI. These are all enablers for moving credit to the last mile. Now, what the after effect of the systemic risk which will come out, I think that's the regulator is on the table for them to kind of judge and take precautionary action. But our only goal is to have this financial architecture in mind and push through.
A year from now, if we were to have a conversation, I'm hoping it will be with me and not at a bot, but presuming journalists continue to be there, a year from now, what will be the one thing in this scenario, so that there is one takeaway at least, in terms of where you think the impact would have been made?
So the impact, as I think I always take from the macro figure, the impact as we have identified everyone digitally. That's we have done.
Sorry?
We have identified every citizen of India digitally, like currently. We are almost like 1.4 billion Aadhaar has been issued. That issue has been solved. We are also moving money, or at least for the 50% of the adult population moving money digitally, right? The next point is the MSME credit, which is only at the 20% level, or the credit level. So next, for me, the most important thing is how to saturate that market through this infrastructure. Mostly the ULI which is coming up, GST, that has been great enabler. GST almost, I don't know how many platforms we are already integrated with. It is integrated with ULI, it is integrated with Trades platform, it is integrated with the GST Sahai which is coming up. So in India, there cannot be one singular approach. It has to be kind of a carpet bombing. It has to be kind of a different intervention at different level, at different segments, different sectors. And everything has to work together in a cohesive manner to actually go to the objective. So my key takeaway is we have to take ULI, use of GST and ONDC to population scale, and that will be the next growth story for us.
Yeah, great. That's really a good thought, really. Since you mentioned GSTN and you mentioned about some of the newer things, so what is engaging the attention of GSTN at the moment in terms of some of the things that you talked about in terms of rollout that you're looking at and all of that? If you could, over the next year time frame, if you can, share some thoughts on that.
See, from policy perspective, I mean, I would not be able to comment, but from the tech perspective, from the architecture perspective, now again, so it's been since 2017, 7 years have gone by. The architecture has been able to scale up very well. I mean, 1.5 crore taxpayers and 50,000 tax officers, etc., etc. So there are no issues there. So there is no radical change in architecture, etc., which is on cards. Now there are some new things, for example, AI, etc. Now AI we are experimenting with, mostly from the perspective of its application for increasing the efficiency of the development work itself. I mean, from the development, testing, its applicability in the software development lifecycle. So, so that's something which we are experimenting with. Now, AI on the front office side is something which is very, very cautious approach there, because there are so many issues which are, related to data security, data privacy, which are involved, and some of my friends have alluded to that. So that's very, very cautious approach, but AI definitely on the software engineering part we are experimenting with.
No, that's important actually, and I think AI, these two letters, I think we have to somehow, I think they creep in, and they have for good reason. But since you mentioned this, I just want to link the point about when we talk of use of these technologies essentially, and tighter compliance also is becoming an important element in it, and you've had experiences in this. How do we, when we talk of scale, which is the main link node in this session, how do we then have tighter compliance and at the same time also ensure that there is the user friendliness, that that ease of doing business, or how the chief economic advisor at our last Express Adda said, ease of being honest. So that is also ensured. Any thought on that? Because you understand technology, you understand the people need.
Mm-hmm. So both tighter compliance as well as the ease of business, they actually funnel through requirements only. From my hat perspective, I'm wearing the technical hat in GSTN. So they come via requirements, and we, from the user friendliness perspective, we make sure that if there is a data which someone enters in one screen, so he does not have to enter it again and again. So it sort of flows across the platform in the various screens seamlessly. If there is some data which a user has entered in some other ministry's website also. So for example, MCA, if you get yourself incorporated in MCA, and if you check the button that you also would want to have a GSTI, and so we integrate with MCI and get the data and start the registration workflow also. So there are integration points with different departments wherein we fetch the data and use it in our basically registration and filing process as applicable. So from ease of filing perspective, ease of business perspective, there is a very cautious approach. I mean, that's a checkpoint, that ease of filing needs to be checked, and all the ways in which it can be achieved, we brainstorm and then basically we incorporate that.
Excellent, yeah. From an ONDC perspective, I mean, the same thing again in terms of leveraging this technology so that ultimately, what are the newer elements that are engaging the attention?
So there are effectively 3 axes on which what we are working in. Let me put some context. Perhaps first 2 years of ONDC was to answer the question, does it work? Fortunately, I can just say yes. Second, then it was a question of what does it work for? And fortunately, now we have an answer, a good answer for that also. Now the answer is, okay, what does it take to scale, right? So by now we have 3 very clear axes of what we are working on. First is, how do we make it now drastically easy? As you said, perhaps everyone alluded to ease of doing business. When you're tinkering, when you're in the testing mode, it's not always easy, it's a nerd's game. But now, how do we make it drastically easy for everyone to use it, which is one axis. Second is trust and safety. Trust and safety in different mean different things. So what does trust and safety in commerce mean? How do you ensure it? And obviously, which is where GST and all of that, it's also, and just as a side note, it is very interesting because we all actually use each other very, very extensively. So anyway, so how do we ensure trust and what does it mean? And third is innovation. So, and let me be very specific because everyone loves talking about AI, which makes me nervous sometimes. Also because there's a lot of risk to it. But for ONDC perhaps, here is how we look at AI. One, very often the source, not the consumer. And I think that is true for most DPIs because the way DPI stack generates data can power India's AI journey further ahead than most. Second is, there's a lot you can do with AI. Our priority is, again, how do we, as we said, make it mass accessible? So for an MSME, for a rural entrepreneur, for a rural consumer, how do I use AI for them to basically grow and have a healthy, happy, growing business and commerce?
Any one example that you can give, just
Sure.
so that there is a takeaway. For example, when you say drastically easy, building trust, or any specific thing that you have done or intend doing this year.
Okay, so let me try to pull one of each. Okay, three examples. When I say, let's say, drastically easy to do business, if you're a physical business, cataloging is a extremely difficult thing for you to do. If you are a small shop, how do you create an image? How do you describe what your product is? If you're illiterate, how do you do it? We are trying to use AI to solve it. So that is one example. When you talk about trust and safety, can I guarantee that you will get paid? Not because e-commerce happens on many hops. Can I guarantee that you will be paid on time? If you're a delivery partner, let's say. When in terms of innovation for mass access, can I make apps, interfaces? In fact, can I enable MSMEs to sell their products without using an app? Without needing to have a smartphone, can I help them sell across India and one day globally? Those are three examples I think I would like to quote, which we are intent on solving in the next 12 months.
Great. So, Sunilji, from the point of view of some of the things which we discussed, I think if you can elaborate a bit on, how you read the use of technology, you understand this much better from your vantage point, really. And also in terms of the point which was about how the newer innovations that are possible now, which includes the aspect of monetizing data, which comes in, and what role you see technology players playing in this. If you can just throw some light on that.
Sure, I think he summarized it aptly in terms of the tech advantage that DPI has given us. The next wave would really be the operationalization part of it, in terms of how do you bring more participants as part of that, if I call it platform economy. And so it's a function of what are the respective motivations of the participants. Interoperability is going to be very important. But if you look at whatever we are building, whether from the growth and the scale, the motivation of the Ministry of Finance, what ONDC is doing to enable commerce, and somewhere we will get in from an embedded finance point of view, or what GST is building for enabling credit. And of course, RBI is making sure there's a balance between consumer protection and innovation, right? The most important person in all this is the 1.4 billion population that we are building this for. And if you look at why all these things have, India has leapfrogged, even developed nations on many of these technologies. And the one reason, if you ask me as a user, as one of those 1.4 billion population, is how easy it is for us to use all these technologies. So whether it's using UPI, whether it's using, DigiLocker, or the best example today for all of us is when we go to the airport, the most secure zone, and we just show our face and we just get in through DigiYatra. So for me, I think for us as technology providers, that is the biggest challenge. So I was talking to one of leaders in the banking sector. He said, what does it take to open an account? We talk of few clicks, but what does it take to open an account when you just show a face the way you're showing it in DigiYatra, and your account gets opened, because it's capturing your identity, and your other details are anyway part of that identity, whether it's your account, whether it's your AML check, whatever. What does it take to do that? So I think that's what we will challenge ourselves and contribute to financial inclusion, which is access to various products, but also today access to credit plus access to insurance, access to wealth products, sachization of SIPs, sachization of insurance. So that's at one end. The other piece is data you mentioned. There is a lot of data that is available today. And consumers today are very well aware. They want to know how their data is getting used. So there are aspects related to explainability of that, how ethically use that data. But that can be used in a very progressive way. For example, in making sure that your credit scoring is not based on very traditional methods, because a lot of population in India today may be banked now, but is still first time to credit. So how do you use that data related to phone usage, related to Paytm usage, or how do you use geolocation coordinates to enable credit for someone who is first to credit? So I think all those technologies will play an important part. And for us, while the work on the core aspects is important, but I think AI will really define how we are going to use all this technology to enable faster adoption of digital in a large population like India. And I believe, like we leapfrogged on a lot of other technologies, I think India will take the lead even on leveraging AI for population scale benefit.
Yeah, from an RBI's perspective, to go on a different plane is also about this fintech repository. Don't want to miss out on that, which has also been in news in terms of what is the status on that. If you can just throw some light on that, it might. I know, how do we incentivize the fintechs to kind of list on this? How do we incentivize them?
Thank you for that question, but I would like to first, discuss on what is the change which is going on. So just I'll complete that and then come to the fintech repository. So you would have seen that a free AI report by the Reserve Bank of India. This is framework for ethical enablement of AI in India, in the financial sector in India. Framework for ethical enablement of AI in the financial sector in India. A report was released recently, and it has given a lot of recommendations. And it has two recommendations related to DPI in particular, digital public infrastructure. One is related to data, that create a data pool of the financial sector, because data is a very, very important for training the AI models. So create those data pools. Already Government of India, MeitY, has taken efforts for other sectors. For the financial sector, similar kind of data can be provided. Of course, now data is being shared through various channels. Account Aggregator is there and other channels are there. But this data pools or lakes which can help in training those AI models by the financial sector. Another aspect is also to make sure that the biases, etc., which are there in a typical AI thing is avoided while using AI in a digital public financial infrastructure space itself. The application of AI, particularly related to the linguistic things, because nowadays translation of languages have become so easy. Anyone is speaking in any language, other persons are able to hear in their own preferred language. So this, I'm sure in the next 1 year or so, it is going to be this one leap we are going to see in the next 1 year, that language-based, a lot of transactions and volumes. Of course, the last mile where we'll be comfortable just depending on that without additional safeguards, I think it is going to take some more time, but this is also something which is there. So I just wanted to touch upon these things. Now I'll come to your question on fintech repository.
Yeah,
so
but before that, actually, since you mentioned this important point, when we talk about this database and leveraging that, so unlocking the database, one hears this, you can correct us if you're wrong, unlocking the database, how much of that is a challenge or a hindrance when reaching the last mile government database, unlocking the government database?
Yeah, so again, the thinking is changing now. Thinking is changing now, and financial entities, and other entities also, they are more and more open to sharing the data. Earlier, as he mentioned about being a Digi Yatra, when now you're comfortable showing your face and giving your data. Now the data is going to a database, Aadhaar data. So over maybe 10 years back, people were not comfortable giving their identity or other data in the digital world, but now they are becoming more and more comfortable. And as they see the use and the benefits of this, it is going to be even more. So each and every imprint of yours, whether it is iris, various kinds of scans, voice samples, of course, then we have to be very careful about the misuse like deepfakes and other things, frauds, which are happening. So on both fronts, innovation as well as taking care of the risks from the innovation. For that also innovation is required. So both this have to be balanced.
I hope it doesn't mean that you will have now a KYC and a KYF as well, know your fraudster. So as long as it doesn't mean more regulation and more.
Certainly, from that matter, even in the Free AI report, RBI has been very, very careful to articulate that innovation first.
Okay. Great.
So that is something which is there. And okay, now coming to the question on the fintech repository.
Yeah, right.
So fintech repository framework was created by the Reserve Bank of India, somewhere a middle path, as in the same line of what I said, not to have an onerous kind of regulatory framework or a registration requirements for the fintech sector, fintech entities. So a middle path was found in terms of which the fintech entities are expected to register to this fintech registry, which has been created by the RBI, operationalized by the Reserve Bank Innovation Hub, and on a voluntary basis. So the question is, what benefit does the fintech get? Fintech gets an interface with the regulator on all policy matters. They have a reach. They can, using this framework, they are able to reach out on policy matters, on certain clarifications, other things, and also it provides a database for us to, kind of shortlist or engage in event like a FinConnect or FinQuery, which are a structured discussion with the fintech sector, and when we are engaging them with the investors as well as the bank and NBFCs for testing their products. So then this overall, we take help from these kind of databases. And we are happy to note that many of the fintechs have come on their own, they have come forward, and they're willing to give this, because for them also, it is a matter of, I would say, visibility, or they also want to engage with the regulator so that their perspective is also heard. And if they have anything, any policy related things, or they want to get in touch, so they have a window which is available.
But how is it different from what we have? I mean, today also they get to interface, they interact with the regulator, isn't it? So,
No.
What would be one solid attraction to be there?
Solid attraction, as I said, the most solid attraction is that in that database, once the information is there, because they give information about their financials as well as the innovations they are doing, as well as their suggestions, etc. So all those suggestions are taken into account whenever any such policy or framework is there. So their voice is heard in a structured way. In a meeting or in a monthly meeting or something, discussions happen. It's more like a learning and knowing each other, and some important points, action is taken. But this is a way in a formal manner, through a written, through an online submission, you can get yourself heard and have a channel of communication. And as I said, database can be used for shortlisting for various things, for engagement with them, for we have frameworks like regulatory sandboxes, hackathons, etc. So this without any much effort, because all the data is already available with them, and without any much effort, they're able to get these additional benefits.
Yeah, great. Mr. Bhowmik, any thought on
No,
this?
I'll just carry on from what Sirin has said. So you asked a very valid question. What is the incentive for the fintechs to register there? First of all, the incentive, the greatest challenge for the fintechs right now is the trust factor. When you go for trust, when they go for asking for any business to any of the banks or any other things, how will the banks rely on those fintechs? The trust factor. So this is one of the way to build that trust. To build that trust that yes, you are registered into that into this repository, and then based on that you have these other credentials. So the other side, when you are going for the business, they trust you. That is one of the very important thing. And the second thing is, this is a very good initiative from the RBI Innovation Hub, but another point is like we also need to kind of be efficient in kind of registering the fintechs. So why can't we have a structure in which we know that these are the fintechs when they are registering from in the MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So we are trying to kind of right now do efficiently register fintechs and get that data when they're registering as a company itself. So that is also in progress, and we will be having that in the short while.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So just a minute, if I can just take before just maybe take a question or two from the audience, is as a concluding thought, perhaps, you know, in each of your spheres, a year from now, what would be the key thing that you see as the priority from your perspective? A line from each of you would perhaps leave some thought.
No, sure, absolutely. I think for me, I will speak, restrict myself only to the financial sector. For the financial sector now, as rightly said, we have enabled multiple pipelines of data. Through account aggregator, through ULI, through ONDC, multiple avenues are there. It is now, and then DPI, whenever we hear the word public in the DPI, in the global arena also there is a narrative, public means government. Public doesn't mean government. Public is for public purpose. And private and public are equally responsible to take the solutions through. So my only aim, goal, objective, and my vision is the private sector should be enabled to kind of utilize this data, create products, aligned to the, I think we can go to the use cases, multiple use cases. The gentleman has also said multiple use cases on the same line. We need alternate credit, we need alternate way of credit scoring for MSMEs, for SHGs, and multiple other entities. So we have to leverage this data to create product, and they create product mostly on the credit, because the credit is a space which is not yet saturated. And for this, we need innovations in the credit space. And the innovation is only on two fundamental principles. The lenders only lend when they are comfortable that they will get the money back. So how to do that? That is through the end user control or the collection control. So collection is basically you have given the money and you want to collect it, and you have some kind of through the technology you can do that. You know the cash flows, you know when the borrower is getting the money back. So if you can put some kind of a rule there with the smart contracts or any other technology that you will, whenever the money gets deposited, I will get it back, then the lender is actually happy about it. Yeah. Similarly, on the end use control, I think Sirin was trying to mention, obviously for the purpose of the loan, if you know for that purpose, technologically, that I have taken this loan to buy a house, and I'm not buying a house, in fact, I'm going and doing gambling, if as a lender, I can ensure that I have already bought a house, then I will obviously give the money to the borrower. So that is the technological innovations of the products which has to come in. There are multiple products, trades, GST Sahay coming in. So for the sake of time, I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Just 30 seconds, just quick, any quick thought, because I just do want to take one or two questions at least from the audience.
My thought is that the fintech is a thriving sector in India right now, and they must take advantage of all these efforts which the public sector is taking to be able to realize the full advantage for the end users and customers. Of course, while taking those measures, they have to, the ethics has become very, very important, and that ethical, for the long-term play, it is important that the ethics, corporate governance, etc., is taken care in the best interest of the fintech themselves and for the entire fintech sector.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sunil ji, just a quick thought, because
So as
I
a
do want.
as a tech provider, our endeavor would be to work with governments to help them in their charter of service delivery and automation for government to citizen interface, government to business, as ease of doing business, and government to government. On the financial services sector, we will continue to work with all the providers to help them serve their customers, whether they are on the asset side, on the liabilities side, or in transaction banking. Yeah. And we will have a fair bit of play of AI in everything that we do now onwards.
Yeah. Just quick, time's up. I do want to take audience questions, so just quick point.
In 1 year, I wish that every business in India can sell, buy, and take credit online very simply.
Okay.
So, so from GST 2.0 perspective, the rate change part is done now, but there are a lot of other things which need to be done. For example, very quick registration, opt-in, opt-out. So those features we will be working on. From the tech side, it is, as I said, the infrastructure and application, there will be a rationalization part which will happen.
Great. Thanks. Can we take a question or two from the audience? Anyone keen to ask anything? Yeah, and whom you'd want? Just a bit about yourself, a line, and then whom you would want the question directed. Can we have the mic, please?
Yeah, Pravesh Kumar Yadav this side. Actually, my question is that since we are going to the online like Aadhaar, UPI, etc., then there is a lot of problem about the immigration problem that is invalid like Rohingya, Bangladeshis, and they are getting kind of huge problem for us. That is, they are creating easily the Aadhaar, then get the UPI, then PAN card, etc. So is it a way of easiness or a kind of burden for us? That's why I want to say in the detail.
Who would you want the question? Who are you?
Anyone of kind of.
Anyone?
Yeah.
There is a studied silence. Is that an answer?
No.
Anyone? Yeah, brave. You're the brave one, please.
I don't think I'm the right one, but the problem, things are, every system can be manipulated, every system has issues, cyber security issues, cyber fraud, cyber crimes. So we have to aptly address those issues and I think plug the gaps. I think that's the whole kind of intervention.
Yeah, great. Anyone? Yeah. A mic to the gentleman here.
Okay, this is a question which is out of the box. I'm Vinay Mehta, CEO of Polewall Technologies, and I have had my share of working with the government, especially the income tax department. 1998, 99 actually, it was very far back. Some of you might be remembering one of 6 schemes of income tax department, which was to widen the taxpayer base, right? There's a lot of change which has happened in the digitalization of information related to citizens and the digital public infrastructure now in these 25, 30 years. And I'm sure government will come up and government might be thinking on this. Maybe Mr. Bhowmik can comment on this later. How to widen the tax base is one of the priorities of the government, right? So as far as our state of digital public infrastructure is concerned now, with AI and everything we are putting in, if we have to widen our tax base from, let's say, existing 2% to 5% or whatever, is our digital public infrastructure in place to coordinate all the stuff from different organizations, do we have a common, what can you call, common theme about that? Common, like some of the integration points, Mr. Srivastava, tomorrow Ms. Sitaraman might come up with something, that we need to widen the income tax base. So all the technology guys who are sitting here, they'll be responsible for answering her how they can do it and, how long it will take, right? And I remember in those days it was so difficult to get the database on tapes and everything else and read that, all the stuff actually. Now we should be in a very comfortable position. So I just wanted to know that, what is our state of readiness for that also?
Okay,
Thank you.
State of readiness. Anyone, I think, yeah.
So it'll be a journey. I mean, I can give my bits and then. So for example, the integration points which we are building with the departments, with the states, etc., etc. So we are conscious of the fact that those integration points are also reusable. What I mean by that is that, so for example, we are asking NPCI to integrate all the discoms, but that's not point-to-point connection. They'll be building a middleware layer which will sort of aggregate the discoms connection points and then basically leave an interface to us. If some other digital platform wants data from, for example, discom, so then the same infrastructure can be reusable for them also. So in the journey of evolution of this platform, whatever IT work is being happening, I mean, to some extent at least, that will also be available for the future platform to basically leverage upon.
So thank you so much. I think a round of applause for our incredible
If I can-
speakers. I think, yeah, thanks so much.